All right, let's dive in. Today, we are tackling a huge topic that is quite literally running the digital world behind the scenes, the battle of SQL versus NoSQL. Now, this isn't just some nerdy technical debate. This is about the fundamental choice that decides how your favorite apps and websites actually work. So let's get right into it.
I mean, think about it for a second. Your social media feed, your online shopping cart, your bank account balance, all that stuff has to live somewhere, right? It needs a home. And the biggest question for any developer building, well, anything, is how are we going to store all that information? That's the choice we're breaking down today.
Before we get into the weeds, let's use a really simple analogy. Think of SQL as a perfectly organized, structured filing cabinet. You know, every folder is labeled, every document has a specific spot, and there are strict rules for how things are filed. On the other hand, you've got NoSQL. This is more like that flexible junk drawer everyone has. You can throw anything in there, keys, batteries, old receipts, whatever, and it all just fits. Both are super useful, right? But for completely different kinds of jobs. So let's kick things off with the classic, the original gangster, if you will, SQL. This whole world is built on structure, rules, and just rock-solid reliability. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it's the language we use to talk to what are called relational databases. The key word there is relational. Just picture a bunch of spreadsheets or tables that are all linked together in a logical way. So you might have one table for all your customers and another for all their orders, and you can create a direct link between them. Everything is neat, tidy, and predictable.
So what really makes SQL tick? Well, first, it has what's called a fixed schema. That just means you have to create a blueprint for your data before you put anything in it. You decide on the columns, the data types, the whole shebang up front. It also has incredibly strong ACID transaction support. Now that's a fancy acronym, but it guarantees one simple thing. A transaction, like transferring money, either happens completely and perfectly or it doesn't happen at all. There is no in-between. This ensures super high data integrity. And finally, SQL is optimized for complex queries that can join together data from all those different tables.
So where does this kind of obsessive-compulsive orderliness really shine? Well, think about systems where you absolutely cannot afford to have a mistake. We're talking banking, big corporate accounting systems, places where every single number has to be perfect and every transaction is accounted for. In those worlds, SQL's reliability isn't just a feature, it's a requirement.
Okay, let's completely switch gears and talk about the new kid on the block, NoSQL. This approach was basically born out of the chaos and massive scale of the modern internet.
The name NoSQL actually tells you a lot. It stands for Not Only SQL, and it's basically a big umbrella term for any database that doesn't follow those strict table-based rules we just talked about. They're designed for all the messy, unstructured data that just doesn't fit into neat little rows and columns.
So what's the big deal with NoSQL? First off, the schema is flexible. You don't need that blueprint. You can just toss different kinds of data in and it'll handle it. These databases are also built for insane performance and something called horizontal scalability. And trust me, we'll get to why that's a game changer in just a minute. They're perfect for handling absolutely massive amounts of data, and they come in all sorts of flavors, like document databases or key value stores.
This mix of flexibility and raw power is exactly why NoSQL is the darling of the internet giants. Think about a social media app. It has to handle a constant flood of posts, photos, videos, likes, comments, all in real time from millions of users. That is a perfect job for a NoSQL database. Okay, so we've met the two philosophies. Now let's really put them side by side and see where they differ. First up, the way they actually store data. SQL, as we know, uses those structured tables with clear relationships. NoSQL, though, is a whole different beast. It gives you options. You can store your data in self-contained documents, kind of like a JSON file, or as super simple key value pairs, or even as complex graphs that show how different data points are connected.
And then there's the schema. This is a huge one. With SQL, you build the blueprint first, and it's pretty rigid. NoSQL is all about being dynamic. It's like, just give me the data, we'll figure out the structure on the fly. This gives you incredible flexibility to change and evolve your application without having to redesign your entire database.
All right, now for what might be the single biggest difference, scalability. This is all about how you handle more traffic and more data. SQL databases tend to scale vertically. NoSQL, on the other hand, is built to scale horizontally.
And you can see exactly what that means right here. To handle more load, the traditional SQL approach is to go taller. You buy one single, gigantic, super powerful, and super expensive server. But with NoSQL, you just go wider. You keep adding more and more standard, cheaper servers to the group and distribute the work among them. Now, you can imagine if you're a company like Netflix or Google, which approach makes more sense for handling global web-scale traffic.
And finally, how they handle transactions. We know SQL gives you that immediate, guaranteed consistency with ACID. NoSQL often makes a trade-off. For the sake of speed and availability, it uses what's called eventual consistency. It just means that if you make a change, it might take a fraction of a second for that change to show up everywhere across the whole system. Now, for a like on a photo, who cares? That's totally fine. But for a bank transfer? No. You need that to be instantly consistent. It's all about trade-offs.
So, theory is great, but let's see where the rubber meets the road. Which companies are actually using what? You're definitely going to recognize these names.
So in the SQL corner, you've got the absolute titans. MySQL has been the backbone of the internet for decades. You've got PostgreSQL, which is famous for its powerful, advanced features that big companies love. And then there's Oracle, the heavyweight champion for huge financial and corporate systems that just cannot fail.
And on the NoSQL team, you have modern powerhouses. MongoDB is probably the most popular document database out there. Then there's Redis, which is all about pure, blistering speed. It's often used to temporarily store data for quick access. And then you have Cassandra, the absolute beast that was built to handle the mind-boggling scale of companies like Netflix and Uber.
You know, this quote really just boils it all down perfectly. SQL is your go-to for anything that needs structure and bulletproof transactions. NoSQL is built for flexibility and handling systems at a massive scale.
So after all of this, who's the winner, SQL or NoSQL? Well, the most important thing to take away from all this is that it's a trick question. There is no better. It's not a competition. It is always, always, always about picking the right tool for the job you need to do. And that leaves us with a really interesting question for the future. As our data gets even bigger and weirder and more complex, is one of these philosophies going to eventually win out? Or, and this is what's really exciting, are we going to see them learn to work together even more, creating hybrid systems that give us the best of both worlds? That's what makes this space so fascinating to watch. Thanks for diving in with me on this one.